I'd like to call the City of Richmond meeting to order this May 4th, 2016. If everybody could please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item up for business tonight is oath of office for our new council person. Would be Katie Kirschner.
Do you want to stand?
Sure.
Raise your right hand. Do you want to read the statement?
Yep. I, Katie Kirschner, do solemnly affirm to support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and to discharge faithfully the duties of the office of City Councilor of the City of Richmond, Minnesota, to the best of my judgment and ability, so help me God.
Welcome, Katie. First item up this evening is the approval of the agenda.
I approve the agenda with the aforementioned additions, added to 6F, G, and some item B, approvals for the trail and the minutes and the resolution of liquor license.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of meeting minutes from April 21st and April 28th, 2016. Is there any questions or comments?
I made the changes.
You did?
I
Okay.
did.
Some of the corrections were listed on our sheet of paper of just some minor technicalities.
I make a motion allowing spelling mistakes if they have occurred.
It won't.
As
Going
printed.
forward, it will be spelled correctly.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item number 5, approval of the bills to be paid. Is there any questions on the bills to be paid?
I have no questions.
If there's no question, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda for this evening, Resolution 127-16, approval of April 2016 journal entries. Item B is Resolution 128-16, acceptance of April 2016 donations. Item C is Resolution 129-16, approval of 2016-2017 liquor licenses. Item D is Resolution 130-16, approval of 2016-2017 tobacco license. Item E is acceptance of People Services April report. Item F is Resolution 134-16, temporary approval of temporary 1 to 4 day liquor license for country snow cruisers for July 15th through the 16th, 2016, which is River Lake Days. Those are the items up for the consent agenda for this evening.
I'll make a motion.
I will second that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item G, which we had pulled from the consent agenda, is Resolution 135-16, approving of Tessa Tomashek as our new city administrator, clerk, treasurer. It's her contract. As for most of you, we've been working with finding a new administrator. And I understand she accepted the terms of the contract that the city has offered.
Yes.
So at this time, I'd look for a motion to approve that resolution.
I'll
I
make
make a
that.
motion to approve Resolution 135-16.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Tessa, if you would like to come up and just give a short little, introduce yourself to the public so they can see your face and
I'm Tessa Tomashek, and I will be the new city administrator, clerk, treasurer. I'm originally from Belgrade and have worked for the city of Belgrade for the last 4 years. So I look forward to meeting everybody and learning all new names and faces.
all right. Welcome.
Welcome.
All right, moving on, the 2015 audit report. Steve Weissman of KDV.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's great to see some new faces and new administration. So my goal today is to walk you through the audit process and the results and answer any questions you may have. My name is Steve Wishman. I'm with the firm of Bergen KDV, based out of St. Cloud, and we've been your auditors for a number of years. And again, happy to be here tonight to just spend a few minutes and walk through the results. The communications letter, the smaller document of the two, is kind of the summary document. I'm going to spend most of my time walking through that, and I think what you'll find when you look at the results is they are very, very consistent with prior years. No significant changes in reporting items such as internal control type items. They're all pretty much the same as last year. The financial trends are all very consistent, and that's the main message I want to give you tonight. So if we could, I'd like you to open up that communications letter document, and I want to start on page number 3 and just walk through some of the internal control type reporting items. Again, for a city the size of Richmond, there are inherently segregation of duties and some kind of cleanup type things that the audit process does and that we assist with. And as a result of that, on page 3, starting with our first internal control item, just talking about audit adjustments, we basically assisted, especially with the transition year, with Marty being gone for most of the audit process time. Cindy jumped in and helped tremendously. We really appreciate all her help. But as a part of the audit process, we did reconcile and propose some adjustments to make sure that the financial statements were properly accurate, if you want to say, and fairly presented. So as a result of that, the first comment really just talks about those adjustments that we helped kind of reconcile and propose for the audit process for a variety of the accounts. You will note that we probably that is a repeat item. We've historically done some of the final adjustments and closing type things for the city as part of the audit process, and that is certainly not uncommon for cities of your size. So again, just listing out a few of those areas that we assisted with for the 2015 audit. The second bullet point or second comment is just relating to preparing the financial statements. And as you can see, the large document is pushing 80 pages or so, and a lot of information in there. And as part of that process, as we've done in the past, we again prepare that financial statement. You do review it and approve it prior to tonight. Ask the questions as to make sure that you understand that information. And one really good example this year is there was a new standard GASB statements 68 and 71 relating to pension reporting. And what it does is it reports the your unfunded component or percentage of the police and fire and the general employee retirement plan deficit, if you want to say the unfunded liability. There's about 15 pages of note disclosure this year as well as accruing that and reporting some of the adjustments, some of the timing differences in there. Really good example of why we would prepare the financial statements, make sure it gets accurately reported. And the note disclosures are sufficient in that respect. So that's the main reason, one really good example of why we do that process. We work with about 75 cities in the state, and as a result of that, we get pretty good at implementing those types of things. So, page number 4, the last comment on internal controls related to segregation of accounting duties. Really, you have very limited segregation of duties with the people you have on staff. That really will likely not change as a result of, except for the fact of maybe hiring more people, which is not cost effective. So just again, realize there's those inherent segregation of duties. Conflicts, if you want to say. We're not recommending you change anything, just be diligent when you look at the bills. Ask the questions that if something doesn't look right. And obviously the audit process, we test the transactions to make sure they're appropriately approved and recorded and things of that nature. So we're comfortable that the processes are working. The opinion we provide is the unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. But again, just kind of remain diligent that again, there are inherent limitations operations and segregation and internal controls to make sure those checks and balances that are available are in place and are functioning appropriately. And again, we have those same like 5 bullet points on page 4 that have been consistent with prior years, just about the access and the control and the authorization and approval and those types of things. So again, really no changes from prior years in those reporting items. Required information, just some required disclosures, pages 5, 6, and 7. Just in summary, there's nothing out of the ordinary in there. We received full cooperation of Cindy and all the city staff. We're able to look at all the information we wanted to. So again, no disagreements, no issues with the audit process. Went very, very smooth. And it was probably a little more challenging than normal with the transition in your staffing over the last few months as well. So again, thank you for your extra effort with that. So. Starting then on page number 9 is some financial analysis, and this is really just designed, again, to be some high-level trend analysis that will support the financial health of the city. And again, starting on page 9 just takes a peek at the tax levy and your tax capacity. Again, your tax capacity rate pretty much stayed consistent at 76.27%. That's just purely a calculation of the levy divided by the taxable type of tax capacity. The number is important, but the trend is probably more important. When you look at the last 3 years, that rate has been very, very consistent. So flipping to the next page, and the reason it's remained consistent on page 10 is the fact that the lower graph, or the kind of the blue left side, your tax levy has remained essentially frozen for the last 3 years and relatively unchanged for the last 5. The tax capacity, as you can see, has been shrinking since 2011, starting to stabilize in 2015, but again, still on the downward trend. One thing that I noted as I look at about 30 or 40 cities, the 2015 on some of them are starting to come back up, the actual tax capacity. So I would think in 16 you might see that leveling or coming back up. That'll help obviously support the tax base a little bit better in the future. So probably nearing or at the low point here at 2015. Page 11, the general fund. Again, this is your major operating fund of the city. It does not include water operations, sewer operations, arena operations, but it is the general fund, operating fund. And for 2015, in summary, the total revenues were about $954,000. That's up about $88,000 from last year. Expenditures were $686,433. That's about $53,000 lower than last year. So you did have a surplus in the general fund for 2015 of approximately $277,000. Your fund balance, $1,421,895. That fund balance in context, there's some general parameters that the state has. There's some internal policies that you have. That fund balance does exceed both of those levels. And you're at about 190% of expenditures for an annual expenditures. But again, been fairly consistent and a little bit growing here over the last few years, but again, a very healthy fund balance for the general fund. And for cities of your size, certainly not an excessive amount. There are a lot of things, a lot of times that there are resources needed for other projects, then you wouldn't have to incur long-term debt with that, so you do have some flexibility with that general fund balance to support some of the other operations if you as a council see fit for that purpose. So really nice level on the fund balance in the general fund, and again, if you look at kind of the trend of the far bar on page 11, you have seen that increasing over the 5 years, so really nice trend there. Taking a quick peek on page 12 of just the revenue stream, and both 12 and 13 kind of shows that. Again, I mentioned the revenues were up from about $866,000 up to $954,000. A couple components there. Your property taxes were up just slightly, and that's just due to some of the timing and some of the collections. Intergovernmental revenues, there was some new state aid for road maintenance, and so as a result that increased by about $53,000. That was the major driver in the revenue increase. in the general fund for 2015. As you see, other things up and down a little bit, but in general fairly consistent. Kind of just graph that on page 13 on the pie chart. If you see that about 50 cents of every dollar is property taxes, 15.7%. That compares to 54% last year. Your intergovernmental revenues, about 37.5%. That's up about 2.5% from last year's 35%. So if you look at taxes and intergovernmental or state aids, it's about 88%. And compared to last year, it was 89%. So really very consistent. A little bit of shift between the two categories. But again, roughly 90% of your dollars comes through taxes and state aids in the general fund. One thing we always look at in the general fund as well is on page 14 to say how accurate were you from the budget standpoint. You had a very nice positive variance. You were about $143,000 over budget. Pretty much all categories were over budget. Intergovernmental revenues for that road maintenance, miscellaneous revenues, just never really knowing what's going to come in. So there was a very small budget, and as a result of that, you exceeded that by about $34,000. So again, pretty much every category over budget from a general fund revenue perspective. Taking a peek then at the expenditure side on page 15. Total expenditures, $686,000, down from $739,000. Again, the major driver there was just the capital outlay and the timing of the purchases for 2015. That was down about $60,000 from last year. So operationally, things were very consistent. And you do have a fairly mature city, so it's really pretty easy to budget all those operations with the general government, public safety, public works. And so it's just kind of capital outlay, those needs on an annual basis that can swing a little bit. And as a result of that, 2015 did have a decrease of about $60,000. And there's only about $2,730 of capital outlay in the general fund. So the equipment, those types of things. So otherwise all very consistent with the exception of that capital outlay, which really is reiterated on page 16 when you look at that pie chart. Again, because capital outlay was about 8.5% last year, and it's only 0.4 this year, that piece of the pie shrunk 8%. Everything else kind of picked up 1% or 2%, so that's really the major change there. On page 17, the general fund expenditures themselves were under budget by about $102,000, $101,990, or about 12.9%. And as you can see, pretty much every category was under budget, so just conservative spending. Public Works was probably the largest one at $48,051, and then Parks and Rec about $15,000 under budget. So again, all contributing to that surplus in 2015 with expenditures being under budget. So again, really good financial condition of the general fund, very consistent operational expenditures. Budget-wise, looks good. Nothing to that we would see as problematic in the general fund, so looks really good. I want to shift gears in and just talk a little bit about your enterprise funds. Again, those are the funds that are set up to kind of be self-supporting. The water, the sewer, and the civic arena fund are the three that we'll go through. And really for the water fund, the operations were very consistent. Revenues were flat at roughly $274,000. Operating expenses were slightly lower by just about $3,000. So you did have operating income in the water fund with and without depreciation. Your unrestricted, your net position did grow, as I mentioned, about $76,000. Does have a cash position of about $519,000 in the water fund. That is down about $29,700. And again, you say, well, if we had surplus operations but our cash went down, there can be things such as cash needs for debt service and some of the capital type investments, and that's the major reason why operations can be up but cash can actually be down, reinvestment in the fund itself. So you do note in the table on page 19, about the third from the bottom number, a change in accounting principle. This was the implementation of the new pension standards. And again, each fund receives a little piece of that unfunded deficit. unfunded liability at para, and I'll walk through in the big book real briefly where you can find that information, but that was about a $21,000 change there to kind of implement that particular new standard. 20 and 21, the sewer fund, the wastewater fund, again, very consistent operations. Revenues were down about $10,000 to $275,000. Operating expenses were down about $7,000, so operating loss was a little bit higher, but just about $3,000. So again, very, very consistent operations. When you look at the last couple years, the cash position in the sewer fund or wastewater fund is about $776,000. And there is about a $374,000 cash commitment for debt service, principal and interest payments in the wastewater or sewer fund. So that's again the main reason why the cash position was slightly lower, even though there was a surplus from operations. And finally, 22 and 23, the arena fund. Again, operating revenues increased about $13,000 to $168,000. Operating expenses were up about $7,000. Did have an operating loss with depreciation of about $50,584, and that is the best of the 5 years presented, so going in the right direction. Really very little cash, no cash position in the arena fund, and again the unrestricted net position. If you recall, a couple years ago, paid off the debt that brought that unrestricted into deficit. That's now starting to come back up, negative 131 compared to negative 153. So going in the right direction there. Overall, there's equity or net position of about $1,632,000. Again, mostly invested in the building and in equipment in the arena fund. One new emerging issue for a couple years out is just some GASB Statement 75. That's on pages 24 and 25. We'll be working with you to implement that. Relating to other post-employment benefits that may or may not apply to you, so we'll just keep you attuned to that. So, questions to this point? And that was the major information I wanted to share with you.
The tax capacity rate of 76.27, isn't that a little bit higher than an average city of this size?
It is. It's hard to compare apples to apples, but it will vary anywhere from, as I look at my cities, I probably have some that are in the upper 30s and some that go into the 80s. So the 78, 76, 78 is probably
the 30s tax capacity, that's cities that probably have a lot of industry.
and a lot more tax base, correct? Yeah, kind of the St. Cloud metro.
Versus what we have is residential.
Limited, correct.
So if we could keep that down a little bit, it would help everybody.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
Just a couple comments I want to make in the large audit book. This is the official book, and it goes to the state auditor, and they will review it as well. But I just want to walk through the audit opinion on pages 2, 3, and 4, and then just hit a couple other pages to show you the pension standard and how that was implemented. So again, page 2 just walks through what management's responsibility is for the financial statements, and management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation. And when I say that, basically I mean it's the day-to-day job of Cindy and her staff to capture the transactions, to record them in the right fund, to reconcile all the accounts, etc. And they do a fine job with that to make sure that when we get the information, it's ready for audit, if you want to say it, and then we do our test work. So again, our auditor's responsibility is to provide an opinion on those statements once they get to that point. We're certainly willing to help get you to where you need to be, and we've kind of done that over the years, and not break our independent standards. But again, we want to be a resource to help kind of close out the year end as well, and make sure that things are all reconciling where they need to be. But as far as the audit process, we do look at different risks every year. We look to see what's going on at the city, essentially by reading your council minutes. We'll look at those to develop new tests to test those transactions that are maybe different in 2015 than they were in 2014. And again, we believe we've done sufficient audit work to provide that opinion, and the top of page 3 is the actual opinion itself, which is an unmodified or clean opinion on the financial statements. So in our opinion, the statements present fairly the financial position of the various funds of the city. So that's the highest level we issue, the best you can receive. Congratulations again for receiving that. That is consistent with prior years, just so you know, kind of an even level there. We did have implementation of that pension standard. That is an explanatory paragraph that just lets the reader know there were some things that were implemented this year, as well as there's some other supplementary and combining information and then reporting on standards with government auditing standards. And since you receive some state and federal funding, we check the compliance side of that to make sure those are being spent properly. Nothing to report there as well. So did a very fine job. I want to just show you a number on page 16, and if you would flip to there. And down about 3/4 of the way down, right before the total liabilities column is the net pension liability. This is the new number from the para pension unfunded amount. It's $174,978. That number was basically audited by para and their auditors. We then tested it as well, and it is your very small percentage of that unfunded component that para has. They're trying to basically be transparent to say what's the potential impact of a city such as Richmond for that unfunded para amount. Now, that is very much a long-term liability that will go up and down depending on investment returns of the para plan, how many people are in it and withdrawing funds, things of that nature. So I did want to just point out where you can find that number. That is as of June 30th, 2015. So as a result of that, there are a couple other numbers relating to pensions, which is a deferred outflow and inflow of resources. And very briefly, what that is they expect a certain rate of return, a certain experience of people pulling funds out during retirement. If those are, the actual results are slightly different, and obviously they will be because you can't hit it 100% on all of that. We account for those variances and amortize those over a period of time between 4 and 6 years. That creates those deferred inflows and outflows. They're fairly insignificant for your city, but I just want to let you know that they're just some of the timing differences that are ongoing as a result of the pension standard that was implemented. And we'll just kind of leave it at that. In addition to that, there's about 10 to 15 pages of footnotes relating to that, and I just want to point out where that is, and I'm not going to go through it in detail, but starting on page 45 is the new pension plan notes to the financial statement. So it does walk through the plans, the benefits that are provided, those deferred inflows and outflows, those timing differences and how they get amortized, what some of the key assumptions are. For instance, they project a 7.9% rate of return on the para plan. They actually exceeded that this past year, so there was a deferred outflow for some of the differences there. Then talks a little bit about, on page 48, about what kind of investments they have, and then what the sensitivity of, on page 49, of your particular liability number, if they earn 1% more than they expect or 1% less, kind of just shows what that amount theoretically could be. So. The questions I normally get on the pension plan is they would say, okay, we have a liability back on page 16 of $175,000 roughly. Do we need to write a check for that? Do we need to come up with cash and send it to para? The answer is no. Statutorily, the para rates are set, the employer contributions. You basically need to meet those requirements, which you did for fiscal 2015. The only thing you would have to react to is if para passes on a change in the employer match, if it's 1/4% higher or 0.5% higher, to try to shrink that gap of that liability. That would be your only obligation, would be to basically fund that as the payroll is being paid. So just wanted to let you know that this is a long-term liability. You don't have to write a check for it. Just have to really make that statutory contribution, but as you have been doing in the past. So just want to point that out. The last comment I have is just in the very back of the book on pages 73 through 77, and again, talked about compliance, and that's a big part of our audit, compliance with government auditing standards, making sure you're spending your dollars appropriately, if you want to say, from a grant perspective. Nothing to report there. As far as compliance, the internal control items are the 3 that I already talked about in the other book. And then independent auditor's report at the last page, 75, on legal compliance. That again looks at if you're following following the statutes, Minnesota statutes relating to bids and quotes, if you're adequately collateralized in your deposits and investments, and investing in the things that are authorized by statute. And again, nothing to report there. So doing a very, very fine job there, again, making sure that you're following the rules, if you want to say, and that again will be filed with the state auditor. They'll look at that as well. So in summary, really, really good report. Very healthy operations, very stable. Just doing a fine job, and I'll kind of close it with that. Questions? Happy to answer those. Feel free to reach out from a transition standpoint too. We'll help you with our knowledge to get you up to speed. Lots of things. But so please do use us as a resource. We're happy to help. So.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Not at this time, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'm fine.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve, very much.
Thank you so much.
Consideration of resolution 131-16, approving of 2015 audit report.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Steve.
Wonderful. Thanks so much.
Great job.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for rescheduling.
All right, moving on this evening. Do we have a streets report for this evening?
No,
right now.
Okay.
we're gonna move that to the 17th
All right,
or
that's fine.
19th.
Moving on to parks report. We do have an item up. Did you want to talk about it, Kevin, or not? Or otherwise we'll just act upon it?
Yeah, you can just act upon the resolution, that'd be great.
Resolution 133-16, approval of supporting regional trail design application in Greater Minnesota. I believe it's for the Rocori Trail, correct?
Correct.
Do you want me to say something about it, Jim?
Sure.
Yep.
If you want to come up.
Basically, the state's legacy funding has the regional trail designation. If we are allowed to get on that, will help us in future funding requests. So what we're trying to do is get in with the Greater Minnesota Regional Trail designation, and then when we go ask for money, they recognize us as a regional trail for legacy grant funds. So all we're doing is making an application, trying to become a regionally significant trail.
Okay.
That's it.
Anybody have any questions?
So basically what you're saying is you're doing paperwork so they're taking you serious.
Exactly. You got it.
We're legit.
Does somebody want to move that along?
I'll make that motion, resolution 133-16.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thanks, guys.
Your meeting is tomorrow, I believe? Tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, Rockville City Hall.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks, Kevin. There is no fire report. There's no EMS for this evening. We'll move on to the people service contract. Greg Stain.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time. Welcome, Katie and Tessa. As you know, my name is Greg Stang. I am now Region Manager with People Service. I'll give you a little history with People Service for Katie and for Tessa. It's actually almost been 10 years ago since People Service has been in Richmond. It was fall of 2006 when we signed the first contract. I came in late October, 3 days before the new wastewater plant upgrade, we have to call it, went online. That's when I came in. And I operated for 6 years at that facility, and now the last 3.5, whatever, I was promoted to region manager. Now I'm the region manager overseeing Richmond and other facilities. So that's kind of where we came and what we do is we do contract operations of water, wastewater facilities. Instead of the city having to hire their own operators, pay for the training, pay for even their pickups, all the insurances, everything like that, we staff it, we take care of weekends, we do everything for the operations and maintenance of the facility. Yeah, you'll be able to get the contract, but Katie, you have a contract probably in front of you, and we, you know, it's a well-written out contract, and we, generally, our first contract was in '06, then in '08, I think it was, we, redid the contract when the city was going with their new water meter program, and all the water meters got installed. They were looking for people to install them, so we re-upped the contract. I think it was a 4-year contract at that time, and with that contract, we were responsible for, I think, a couple hundred, let's say, water meters that we had to install for no extra fee. Then that one brought us to 2012, and then in 2012, it was a 4-year contract. And then what that 4-year contract has right now is an automatic 2-year rollover if we do nothing. You know, if the city does nothing right now, it'll automatically roll over for 2 years. And I guess originally in the resolution that was done in 2012, Marty says approved the contract through 2018. So I don't know if he was looking at that, but that is originally what the city approved. And like I was speaking with Cindy with the contract, has in there is, if the city wants out, we'd need a 90-day notice for August 31st, so we need a 90-day notice. And that's why, you know, we're here now. That was one of the trigger points that we should get this taken care of now to get a new contract renewal. The draft copy we have there is for a 5-year renewal, and then that one, the language is in there, and as it says, it's a draft, so things can change with the language in there, which we've been doing more for other cities, is we do a 5-year rollover. If the city does, you know, the city wants, so we can just automatically roll over extra 5 years. And that's, like I say, it's all a draft. But we, yeah, like I say, the contract goes to October this year. And one of the driving points was from our last meeting there, and the language we can put in the contract would be for the little seating for the city of Roscoe, because they're looking at coming this way maybe, and potential that we can oversee the lift station, the piping, everything, operate and maintain that for them, no extra cost to Richmond. We just oversee that and take the liability and operate the lift stations, that stuff. And plus, if we can renew now, that'd also be, we freeze the price until it'd be till September 1 of 2017. So there'd be no price increase. Generally, the price increase always goes off of the CPI for, I think this one's for May of that year. That's where it's at. And with, in your packets or in your, there's some cost comparisons, draft contract, that kind of stuff, and I'm open for any questions.
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, where's in the old contract, it covers the liability information? And I don't see that in the draft agreement? I must have the old one in my board packet, right?
Or it might be. Yeah, it might be, when it was printed, it looks like it only.
Just the odd number of pages.
Yeah, odd number of pages.
Oh, it just printed the odd pages.
Yeah.
Oh,
We just realized that.
I said
I know,
everyone.
we're looking at it. I don't know what Greg sent
Kind
me.
of cool, yeah.
Good question.
But no, the contract actually, I think you have a copy similar to this, and the changes are gonna be listed way on the right side. If you have a copy.
None of that.
Okay, that can come on like that, so.
Yep.
Mainly it's the date changes, as far as for the contract, the dating, and the language in there for Roscoe was put in there. And then we had some other legal stuff we had to put in because we have a government contract, and we had to put in for equal opportunity employment stuff, things like that we had to put in. And then we're pretty much the only changes.
Greg, being that we have a new council member and now we're gonna be having a new city administrator, I personally would like to see this get put onto our next workshop so that both of them have a chance to look at it and feel part of the agreement.
I'd be fine with that.
Not trying to
No, I totally
move too
understand.
fast along here, but I mean, we have some time to get this done and I'd like them to have a chance to read it over and understand it and ask their questions, and so they're all on board of what's going forward. And, you know, obviously if some of those other items that we talked about end up happening, then
Exactly.
we can add them at that time. So, I don't know, unless somebody else has a different opinion, but
Just have one question about the 2 to 5 year rollover type thing. Why is People Services wanting to go to the 5 year?
Why would they want to do
Yeah, just to lock it up for a longer period of time.
And it's for sense of security for the city and for people
So
service.
security for the city would be 2 years. They can
Yep.
be independent after that if they wanted to be.
What's that?
The city could, go independent at 2 years rather than if it would be locked into a 5 year type thing. Correct or not?
Yeah.
Cindy had made the proposal to Greg that, we have a new council member and a new administrator. Like to wait with this and give everybody a chance to look at it and if anybody's got questions, they can contact you and, find out from Greg if some of the changes are made or whatever.
Absolutely.
Is everybody on board with that?
I'm fine with that.
All right, so fine, Greg?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's,
So we're gonna leave this alone for tonight and we'll move it to our workshop on the 19th. Or maybe for the next televised meeting, we'll have it worked out by then and we can do it at that time.
I know I will not be
That June 1st?
19th.
June 1st.
It'll be June 1st.
Would that be all right then?
Yeah. I
We'll
won't-
talk about it at the
I-
19th, just to make sure everybody's on board, that everybody understands all assets of the contract.
June 1st.
All right?
Okay.
Thanks, Greg. Anybody have any other questions for him before we let him get away?
Just, I guess this is a general question relating to the sewer and water. Have we made a date to speak to neighboring municipalities?
No.
No. Okay, so there's nothing, have we made contact with them?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want the ball to stop. Okay, thank you.
I have an additional question. So People Services is out of Nebraska?
That's the home base, yes. Yep.
That's the what?
That's where the home base is.
That's where the home
correct.
base is?
Yes, yes.
Well, I was just looking at the last contract and it talks about to be in compliance with the laws of the state of Iowa. Just kind of wondering.
That language was missed because we're in a 5-state area.
Oh, okay,
And,
okay.
it's where, no, we work with the MPCA and the Department of Health and for all Minnesota laws. So
Okay.
that's why the contract that was the old one.
Okay.
That was
We'll
the
make sure the new
Yeah.
one says Minnesota.
Yeah, no, in the new
Check
one,
out that.
I'm quite sure does.
Okay.
But I think that's the original. Facts. Yep.
Nice to meet you. Thanks.
All right,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Is there any other council requests of action tonight? Other matters of concern for this evening, the Richmond Fire Relief Association is having their chicken fry on May 21st. It's a Saturday night at 4 p.m. and the dance starts, I believe, at 8 p.m.
Where is it?
at the
City Arena.
Civic Arena.
The reader?
The other item up is our next council meeting will be May 19th. It's a Thursday night. It starts at 6:30. It's open to the public. And is there anything else to add?
I'll just let you know, we have the 2 new homes, the one that had come before the council requesting a variance for the detached garage. They should be digging on Monday. And one other new home that started this week, so that's a good deal.
Anybody else?
Two homes.
Anybody else have anything to add?
Just one question, when do the summer rates go on? Somebody asked me about the water, where the sewer is locked in, I presume, correct? And then they can use water rates. Is that this month or next month?
It's, then the new rates are this month.
This month?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. The averaging happens November through April.
Yeah.
Did we get that one?
I already asked. There was none.
No.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there anything else to add for this evening? If not, meeting is adjourned.
Is